Well, now, Etepu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Harun Nefer. This is Kasakma Keparu here once again in nature, and I haven't even had breakfast yet. Today, we're going to talk about an exciting subject, and that is how your shadow self will destroy you. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on the bottom. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or for more videos. And consider becoming a Patreon supporter where I have classes on the esoteric, on New Age stuff, spirituality. It'll take you to the next level, instructional classes on divination, how to perform a ritual, how to put together an amulet, what are mantras, all that good stuff. And you can be a member for as little as $1 or $5 a month. And your support helps me to create more and more ebooks, like the one I just released called The New Kepler Ankh, which is kind of the secret key to creating your own reality. It's a really awesome book. And I just released that ahead of schedule. It's going to be released tomorrow, but I released it yesterday. So I'm a little ahead of things. But today, I want to talk to you about an important subject matter, which is about what they call in Wicca your shadow self. Now, what exactly is the shadow self? Well, there's a theory that many psychologists have, including Carl Jung, or Jung. He was a Swiss psychologist. He differed from Freud, Sigmund Freud, in that he embraced a little bit of the New Age esoteric movement. So he's a little bit different. And Carl Jung, or Jung, experimented with, well, I shouldn't experiment, but he theorized a lot about archetypes and the shadow self, or more importantly, he made a lot of notoriety in the field of synchronicity. He actually coined that term. So we have to give him a lot of credit for that, synchronicity, okay? But he really differed from Freud, because Freud was more, we could say he aligned more with the status quo. He didn't break away or embark into the New Age arena, whereas Carl Jung sort of kept an open mind. But then there are some, and we have to put things in perspective, that says he was a white supremacist, racist. So let's just not hail these historical characters and give them too much accolades, because they're sometimes the darker side to them, which brings me to the shadow side, okay? So you will hear a lot of people in spiritual culture talk about shadow work, you know. Now, what that is that we live in a society that represses a lot of things about your personality. Chief among that is sexuality, okay? So the idea of the human body as being sinful, we repress the idea of the naked body, because here in this society, especially in North America, is looked down upon to show your naked body, whereas more in European countries, when I went to Europe, I saw that nudity wasn't a big deal for them. In fact, they had nudity on TV. But here in this country, we repress a lot of those things, and especially when it comes to sexuality. But what happens when you repress those things? They become part of the shadow self, because they're not given expression. You understand? Without that vehicle for you to give expression to those emotions and feelings, then it becomes that shadow self, and it grows and grows and grows. One of the things that we understand, not as psychologists, but as magi's or occult practitioners, is that you are a reality generating machine, and the reality that you're generating is based on your belief system. And the danger that we get into is that when we accumulate these things in the shadow self, the other aspect to us, then what happens is that in some way, shape, or form, it becomes a reality in our life. And it used to become a reality in different scenarios that we'll encounter and that will play out in our lives. And because we have been taught from a left brain perspective to think that there's an outside world, we think the world is against us. We don't really realize that we are projecting this to create a fourth dimensional experience to interact with, to have an experience. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, the problem is many psychologists, including Carl Jung, were talking about something very interesting. And this is what Kemetic people had really discovered thousands of years ago, which was integration. So in other words, you don't want to have that shadow self. Now, in Kemetic culture, we don't call it shadow self, we call it conditionings. In NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, they call it patterns. You see, what is a conditioning? A conditioning means that you are essentially have a free will. What that means is not that you are free to make a decision to go left or right. A free will meaning that you don't have a compulsion toward anything. You don't like or dislike anything. This is your essential nature. You're one. You're at peace. You're at rest. So you don't like chocolate ice cream. You don't dislike vanilla ice cream. You don't have these likes, dislikes, and fears and hangups. That's what it means to have a free will. Now, it is through your upbringing, through parents, social engineering, through past life experiences that reincarnate with you, you take on characteristics and you become what we call as a person. And the person has likes, has dislikes. And you should also understand, and one of the things that's very, very important for us to understand is that children up until the age of 4 remember their past lives. Let me say that again. Children up to the age of 4 remember their past lives. And as a parent, it's incumbent upon you to work with your child so that they can talk to you and reveal to you what their past life was about, because you can put them on the right path in this lifetime to continue the studies that they were embarking on in that past life. So in the past life, they were a great mathematician, astronomer, architect. If that's what they did in their past life, you should do whatever you can to have them continue in those fields in this life. And the way to do that is to understand and recognize the things that they are telling you about themselves and the things that they're acting out as play. And that is an indication of the things that they did in the past life. You see, they are ancestors. These are not children, are not property, and we have to get out of that sense of thinking that because a mother births them that they're property. They are ancestors who are choosing to come back here to help the planet shift to a new level. And too many times in our society, children have been abused, treated like second-class citizens. So I want you to think about that. But the point I want to make is that all of these things culminate into the shadow self. And if you don't deal with this shadow self, it will continually create scenarios in your life, fourth dimensional experiences, real experiences that will challenge you and create all kinds of obstacles and obstructions in your life. Now, what the Kemetic people saw was that through a process of integration, there does not have to be a shadow self, meaning that what creates the shadow self is to take on the ideology of good, bad, left, right. Do you understand? When we are polarized in our thinking and we're set up to see things in this type of Hegelian dialectic or opposing sides, that creates the shadow self, because we then define and label things as bad. And, oh, we can't talk about that. That's bad. That's negative. So you repress those things and you create that other alternate aspect of yourself, which inevitably creates a split in your psychology. You become a schizophrenic in a way. There's what they call in psychology, there's a thing called the honeycomb effect, where you develop another personality. And if taken to the extreme, then that personality can dominate you. But this, again, comes from repressing a lot of things in your life. And we have seen this with people who've gone through a lot of trauma, that they're not able to face that trauma, so they repress it and they forget about it. But it has to find expression. So instead of us going through our lives and embracing the idea of duality, which is a third-dimensional kind of philosophy, a third-dimensional ideology that we have accepted, we have to reject that, because that is what inevitably creates the shadow self. That idea that there are things that are against you, that there's good and a bad, because good and the bad, that's really a fourth dimensional concept that does not exist in the fifth dimension. Right and wrong does not exist in the fifth dimension. As you climb higher and elevate yourself to a higher spiritual level, you will understand that all things are one, and you are one with all things. And the basis of that says that there's nothing that you can do that's wrong. You cannot transgress against yourself. So the idea of right and wrong is really, that's an idea that was created to exist in the fourth dimensional plane. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, it's very good. Again, you have to have that concept of ma'at to exist in the fourth dimensional plane. But when you elevate your consciousness, you'll realize that there's no need for that. But the problem is that we're in a Western society ruled by scholars and so-called wise men who embrace and practice left-brain thinking. And left-brain thinking always tells you that there has to be a polar opposite to everything. Notice how I said opposite. Whereas in non-Western cultures, they always say there's a complement to everything. Yin and yang is a complement, not an opposite. And the mere fact that you accept the idea that it is an opposite sets you up for a kind of battle of good versus evil. That's not what we need to be doing on this planet, is seeing things as opposition to us. In fact, when we encounter an opposition, we should be looking how to integrate that into our thinking. In my book, The New Keppel de Ankh, I introduced the idea of the Tetralama. And the Tetralama tells us, it derives from Indian culture, that the wisest of wise people, men and women, can take two ideas and hold them in their thought process and not see them as conflicting. That's when you get to a wise level. That you embrace all possibilities without favoring any one of them. When you do not see these other possibilities as opposing or as opposing your thesis. If I say, well, a democracy is the best form of government, well, I can counter that by saying, no, well, we want to have a republic. But I'm not going to say that republic is right and democracy is wrong. Because that creates that dichotomy, and then that creates a repression within people, because people don't want to be engaged in doing things that are labeled as wrong or incorrect. See, when I introduced the idea of a parallel reality, and I said, in that parallel realities, there's different versions of you that you need to integrate with. Now, of course, Western concept is you need to get rid of those parallel selves. You need to, those are opposing you. No, you need to integrate with them, to become one with them. In the story of Asar and Aset, one of the greatest, what we call it, mythologies ever written, in that story, it tells us very clearly that your enemy exists to bring out spiritual power within you, and that there is a place in a large scheme of things in existence itself for your enemy. So therefore, your goal is not to get rid of your enemy or to kill them, but to embrace them, because they are shedding light on another aspect of who you are. Because in essence, you will not be able to live without the shadow self. So if this shadow self exists within you, and if you are a reality generating machine, and if this shadow self is composed of all the negative things that society tells us is wrong, then what is going to happen is you're going to manifest it and create what we call as bad luck for yourself. So how do we deal with this? Well, we deal with this first and foremost by understanding and taking on a new philosophy, that we're going to stop labeling things as good, bad, painful, pleasurable. You have to stop with those labels and definitions and start to integrate these processes. This is why in the ancient Kemetic culture, you see Osir. Osir has, he's depicted as a mummy, very still, because he's beyond the influence of emotions. He's not influenced by emotions. He's gone beyond that idea of right and wrong, left and right, Democrat, Republic, feminists, male rights activists. You cannot win in those situations where you're setting things up to oppose one another. And this is how the ruling elite, this is how they've been able to conquer the planet, because they have defined within you these ideas. Look at what they've done to the planet. They have constructed it so that the majority of the planet wants to be white, because they think white is right. And that people of color are shunned. And we're saying, well, why can't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Why is it that you're in poverty? It's because of your own self. Because we have that idea of them against us against them. So then what they tend to do is they've introduced the idea that, oh, well, you have to start ridding the planet of these people because they're undesirables and they're no good. You see, that's what birthed racism. And then we can move on to sexism. That the Western culture does not see the female as a complement to who they are. I've always contended that when you study the psychology of white males, that you will see that they have a deep shadow hatred of females or women. You can see it really depicted in the horror films. I'm being real. I'm keeping this real with you now. Western man does not like women. They have a hatred of women, which is why when you look at Western man's culture spanning back to antiquity, you will see that they've always taken away the rights of women, oppressed women, put them in the background, whereas in the traditional ancient cultures, women were always given a high place in the culture because we worked on the integration and not seeing women as diametrically opposed to us. Let me say hi to the Magi's in the chat room. Jackie at Tepu, Michael Scott, good to see you. Namaste. Tuha Aru at Tepu. Deborah, ooh, it's good to see you. Deborah, haven't seen you in a while at Tepu. Aset at Tepu. Now, this is why, going back to what I was saying in Wicca, they do a lot of exercises to purge you of the shadow self, to get rid of the shadow self. But you don't want to get rid of the shadow self. You want to integrate with it. Hey, Gabe, Tepu, you want to integrate with whatever is in there. Now, when we look at the great oracle, the I Ching, which is the real interpretation is the book of the way, they have what they call the 50th hexagram, which is the cauldron. And what is in the cauldron? What's in the cauldron is whatever you put in. You know, like it's your thoughts, your darkest thoughts, your all lust, all things that you desire that society shuns, is in the cauldron. And then there's a passage that talks about that you must turn over the cauldron and empty it before you can start to embark on spiritual culture. You have to get rid of all that stuff that's in you. Well, I'm here to tell you that what you need to start doing is embracing everything as though it is a part of you, a part of the whole. And not seeing any one thing as against you, but seeing it as working for you. In fact, the I Ching tells us that everything serves to further. Let me say that again. Everything serves to further. When you start seeing oneness on the totality of everything and not just being selective in what you're one with, then that's when you become a true spiritual being. You see, many Western psychologists, they too have now gotten on this thing about the shadow self, but their idea of the shadow self is to still embark on the idea of the good side of the force and the bad side of the force, the dark side, and they battle, and there can only be one winner. No, that's what we're not looking for that. And you'll see this in whenever the president of the United States, whenever a president comes into office, they always have to push the idea of we're in the right. And we have the right to go overseas and start wars because why? We're in the right and they're in the wrong. But who says so? Who says so? You should not be defining any one person or group as your enemy. That is against the principles of Ma'at. Ma'at is oneness. Ma'at is the interdependentship and interrelationship between all things in the universe. I need you. I depend on you. Without you, I cannot exist. Without that tree back there, I cannot exist. So nothing opposes me. Everything works for my favor. And our language, the very language that we use, this Western bastardized English language, is what is damning us and betraying who it betrays our true nature as God men and God women. Because this language is peppered with things that set us up to have these challenges, these obstacles in our lives. Oh, I don't like that person. That person gets on my nerve. He just makes me so upset. Oh, I'm not going to, no, that situation is very negative. I don't want to know. I'm not going there. See how we're defining this? You're a bad little girl. You're a bad little boy. Why did you do that? And this reinforces in our minds these ideas, which then we continue to manifest. It's a vicious cycle that goes round and round and round. This is why, my beloveds, this is why I have told you this. Stop saying, God, I need you. God, please do this for me. God, save me for this. Stop saying that. Rather, grow as a spiritual being into the recognition that you are God. And then say to yourself, I will get myself out of this situation using my power. I am God. I may not remember the universe that I created. I may not remember this planet that I created with the great moon that I created, but I did. I did. There is no God that's outside. There is no God that's outside. There's no guy sitting up on the clouds with a white beard. There's none of that. There is you looking back at yourself as a reflection. There is you, the observer, consciousness, looking back at yourself and saying, look at the experience I'm going through. This is interesting and this is good because I want to have this experience. Remember what I said before. In the beginning, there was only you. And in this fourth dimensional experience, it's still the same thing. It's only you. Everyone else is a creation. Everyone else you created. This is why if you want to change somebody, you merely have to meditate and see them changing and watch as they will change. You're not dealing with objective physical things that exist apart from you. Get rid of that notion. You are dealing with a contrived illusion, a very good one, a very good illusion. But it's a testament to your power, how great you are, because you could create something so detailed, so magnificent that you've even fooled yourself into thinking it was real. But that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to create something so magnificent that it would even trick you in believing it's real. That's how powerful you are. Give yourself a pat on the back and say, damn, I'm good. I created this planet to be so realistic, it has fooled me, and I think it's real sometimes, but I have to remember it's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. My girlfriend, she's an illusion. The car, it's an illusion. The house, it's an illusion. It's a creation of your belief system. If you want to really strive to come into your spiritual power, to get back to that place that you were originally at, of being all powerful and all knowing, what you need to understand is you need to integrate, not separate. Separation is the left brain thought process. Integration is a right brain thought process. So you need to integrate. You will not be God man, God woman, holding in your mind the idea that you have an enemy, the idea that something is painful, the idea that something is pleasurable. You cannot reach that level of God like with those thoughts. It can't happen because God is impartial. God cannot play favorites. That book that was written with the Bible, God, would punish those with fire and brimstone. That was written by people with a child mentality. The Ten Commandments was written by somebody with a child mentality. No God says that. What God says, I'm a jealous God. If there is a God that's a jealous God, you're fucked. That means that you have a God that has all these real messed up emotions, jealousy, anger. You're in trouble. But our God, the Cometian God, or source, or nebecher, or nectar, however you want to call him, her, is beyond the influence of emotions, doesn't play favorites, and you cannot emotionally sway our God. And going back to what I was saying before, if you want to start to come into the realization of who you are, then you'll stop saying our God or God out there or God in here. And then you start to realize that I am God. And you are just as in the comedic tale of Osset, when she went to grab the different parts of Osir and put them back together again. She was looking for the different members. You are remembering who you are because you have wiped your memory clean so that you can have an authentic experience here. So you have to get back to remembering your past lives. It is the most difficult work possible to start looking at that shadow side of yourself because you have repressed so much of it. It usually comes out during dreams when you're sleeping. But you have repressed it so much so that when the scenarios manifest in this fourth dimensional plane, which you manifest them, you may not even recognize them. This is why we have sages, we have priests, that you can go to the priest, you can go to the diviner, and he'll do a reading and say, this is your hangups. This is what you're going to be dealing with. You need to work on this. And then when you start working on those things, you'll see that things in your life start to align. They align properly. And you call that fortune or good luck. It's only the fact that you've accepted a new belief system and that you're ready to move on to the next level. So it's not really good luck. You can call it that. So what I would like for you to start doing is to start being mindful of the words you use, filter out those things that you realize creates opposition. And keep doing this. Case in point, for example, in the Kemetic culture, we differentiate between the self and the person. If I speak to you, I would speak to you in terms of my person doesn't like vanilla ice cream. My person hates coconut. My person doesn't like that girl. But if I were to refer to my true self, I would say myself, because my true self has no likes and dislikes. But the person does. The person is Sahu. He is an animal spirit, is an animal aspect to the person, which goes back to the mammalian and reptilian brain, the earliest part of our development on the brain. So when you hear this thing about doing shadow work, and they're talking about purging you of the shadow self, you've got to say, no, I don't want to be purged of the shadow self. I want to integrate the shadow within me. There's a famous line in Captain Star Trek, and Captain Kirk went to the transporter room, and he was split into two, a good Kirk and a bad Kirk. And then when they were fighting each other, the bad Kirk was losing. And good Kirk looked and said, I want you to come back to me, because can half a man live? No. Until this planet recognizes the fact that the religions are the ones that are fostering this idea of good versus evil, which is a very primitive notion, and is a notion that has caused wars, caused racism, caused sexism, caused poverty, caused disease. This is where all of these things originate from. This idea of right and wrong. Because the Christians who enslaved the Africans felt that they could do so because the Bible sanctioned them, because the Bible said you're in the right. They weren't spiritually evolved to understand that it wasn't about being right or wrong. It's about working with your brother, working with your sister, because we all are one and we integrate within each other. And I cannot be without you. This is why God needs you. God needs you to have this experience, no matter how traumatic and painful this experience is on this fourth dimensional plane. God needs you. God doesn't want to rule you. God doesn't want you to fear him or her. God wants to commune, to be one with you. See, we don't understand this because we have not grown in spiritual evolution, because we don't understand this concept that you can be here in this body as God, and also at the same time, in the same space-time continuum, be out there everywhere in the universe in all different dimensions. See, Western man doesn't get that. They don't understand, because Western man sees everything separate, and it has to be one or the other. It has to be you're here or you're there. You're here or you're there, or you're left or you're right, or you're good or you're bad, but you can't be both. That's how Western man thinks. I can be both. I can be God here and God everywhere. Why not? If I'm all powerful. Western man does not understand that concept. When he went into ancient Kemet and he saw the religion was not separated from anything else. The religion was part of dentistry, it was a part of surgery, it was a part of politics, it was a part of economics, and there was no word for religion, or there was no specific word for spirituality, because it was integrated in everything. It was like breathing air to the ancient Kemetic people. It was not separated from anything. Not like today, we have separation of church and state. We go to university, uni, which should mean one, but no, the university has different subjects that you study that have no connection to each other. So hence, it doesn't align with the word university. So something's wrong. Because ancient Kemetic people didn't teach different subjects in different disciplines. They didn't do that. They were right brain people. They knew how to merge things, to bring everything together. And now Western man is looking for that, which they call the unified field theory, or the unified field principle. They're looking for that one principle that unites everything, because now they understand the importance. But again, they make the same mistake because they're only looking at this in terms of science. They're not looking at it in terms of life. Why can't modern psychologists admit the truth that Western man has a sickness of polarity thinking? And it is only unique to Western man, because cultures of indigenous people don't have that problem. And that modern psychologists can't admit that the progenitor of all of our ills in today's society comes from this left brain thinking. This idea of separating things. Aset said, your ebook discusses this in detail. Yes, it does. Dwa. So thank you, Gabe. He says you're going crazy right now. Preach. This is why the Illuminati had to get rid of people of color, because people of color were the only people on the planet that said all things are one. And if you're trying to conquer the planet and you need to indoctrinate the planet into this philosophy of divide and conquer, you can't have a group of people that are talking about oneness. You can't have that, because they stand in your way of the conquest of the planet. So you have to eradicate them. So you have to create this pendulum, this ergobor called racism, so that you get half the population on the planet against them. Do you see how we're being set up? You see how this is all being manipulated in this matrix? And when I tell people this, I was telling people that you're not going to solve racism, you're not going to solve sexism by attacking the problem directly. It's not going to work. You can put all the laws you want to protect those people of color. You can put all the laws you want to protect women or transgender people. It's not going to work as long as the planet is still caught up in left brain thinking. It's like the mythological Greek Hydra. You cut off one head, it grows another head. It's multi-headed. It's going to keep growing those heads. You have to attack the problem at the core. And the core is the thinking of the population of the planet. That's the problem. Get to the core. Because this idea that infects the planet called racism also affects, as I said before, the subjects in the major universities. It is one problem that is appearing to be multifaceted, but it's not. It's not multifaceted. It's not different problems. The same thing that causes racism causes sexism. The same thing that causes poverty causes disease. It's just one problem that if we attack that problem, we would eliminate everything else. When you go into churches on Sunday, you see the people sitting there praying to an outside entity, a God. You know that the world is on the wrong track. Because those people sitting there in that congregation don't realize that each and every one of them are God. They don't realize that because they've been duped. They've been duped by a system that wants to eradicate them. Now, make no mistake, the Illuminati just doesn't want to eradicate people of color. It wants to eradicate a large majority of white people too. So you're dealing with an evil force that they're not really caught up in color, because they just care about themselves. But you see, they confuse the issue. They make you think that it's all about color, but it's not. They make you think it's all about gender, but it's not. They make you think it's all about economics, about being rich, but it's not. I want you to think about this message, kind of ponder it, and start doing your meditation, start doing your spiritual work to integrate into what you perceive to be those negative aspects of your personality, which are not really negative. Let's take, for example, failure. Is failure negative? No, it's not. It just shows you a path to success. So you must have failure to have success. What was it, Thomas Edison? They were saying he failed, 1,000 times? He did all these experiments to create the light bulb. And they said, they asked him about those 1,000 failures. He says, no, there wasn't 1,000 failures. It showed me 1,000 ways how not to create the light bulb. It's all in your perspective and how you're looking at something. But those failures are an integral part of the success. You cannot have one without the other. So let's stop seeing it as bad. There's nothing wrong with trial and error. There's nothing wrong with that. See, if we were on the right course and we were right brain thinkers, we would be able to solve this problem of religions fighting against one another. Because immediately the right brain knows how to reconcile differences. I'll say it again. The right brain knows how to reconcile differences. The left brain does not know how to reconcile any difference. That's not what it does. It is not for that function. God gave us the right brain to show us how to reconcile all differences. Because the right brain is wisdom. It is Tahuti. It is thought. It is Hermes Trismegistus. But see, they don't want us thinking out the right brain. They don't want us doing that. Because they know what's going to happen. We're going to bring the world to peace, and we're going to bring the world to be an advanced civilization full of high moral people, spiritual beings who can transfer their consciousness, who can float in the air, levitate. They don't want us to do that. I'm not speaking science fiction. When I say levitate, yes, we can levitate. Anyway, Magi's, I got to get out of here. I've said my piece. I got to go talk to the cat down the road. And that's all I have to say. Stop creating enemies. Stop fighting against things that are not your enemies. Stop creating enemies. Stop creating negative situations. Embrace that which you feel is a challenge. Embrace that which you feel is an obstruction. It's not. It's really not. But too many people, you know, they want the sun without the moon. They want the clouds without the rain. Hey, Everett, Hatepu, peace, brother. This is Kasaf Ma Keperu, son of Tahuti and Ma'at. And my aunt is a beautiful goddess, Heru. And my protector is Harukuhuti, God of justice. Till my next video, I'm in Ra.